In last week's video, dear viewer, we looked at how Beware the Q came to be in possession of two original works of art sent over by the mysterious Justin Curry. The first one he sent was that of a Q specimen, a wonderfully detailed up-close look at the monstrous alien species responsible for much of the Starmen's misfortune. The second illustration was a more sombre affair and depicted a widowed star woman turned spacer with her two children. Mr. Curry has stated that there will be many more illustrations arriving over the coming year in the epic new project known as All Tomorrow's Revelations. And now he has indeed sent over a new piece for me to showcase, and here it is. Yes, this week's brand new and exclusive illustration is an original depiction of the fan favourite species known as the Killerfolk. Brave warriors they be. In this image we see a Killerfolk chieftain and his bride, who is asleep in his arms. The artist has leaned heavily into their feline appearance, hinted at in the original All Tomorrows. The text at the top reads, "Fear not death, for the hour of your doom is set, and none may escape it." As we can now expect from this artist, the level of detail in the drawing and the use of colour is exquisite. I am still amazed that the artist is willing to give these illustrations to me at no charge and seeking no compensation. The male has a distinctly tiger-like appearance, while the markings on his bride seem to be more cheetah-like, hinting at their respective ancestries on Earth. In the background, on the left, we can see a Killerfolk city comprised of many tall buildings. Behind the city is a gigantic pyramid. As we all know, the Q were fond of leaving pyramids on their conquered worlds. Could this be an ancient Q pyramid which has been repurposed and used by the Killerfolk over their long existence? Or could it be an original Killerfolk structure, a design instinctively arrived at like their human ancestors, and the Q themselves? Above the pyramid, we can see a large triangular Killerfolk ship, with many others patrolling the skies. We can also see a large circular or spherical object in the centre of the background. It appears to be on fire near the top, but what exactly is it? The story that was provided with the image explains all. But first, if you enjoy what I do here on YouTube, then please head over to my Patreon and become a patron. It would make me very happy. As archaeologist Nemo Ramjet set foot on the Killerfolk's homeworld, he would discover thick jungles had overtaken what was once the Killerfolk's cities and homes. Mother Nature had not been kind to the technology left behind in the rubble. Neither had Father Time. This, coupled with the Gravital invasion which had taken place many millions of years before, made salvaging any useful data difficult, and so what knowledge could be salvaged goes as follows. The Killerfolk were derived from human, feline and canine DNA. It would seem that the Q, in their gene tampering escapades, had also taken to gene splicing and creating hybrids of different species. As a result of this, the Killerfolk would evolve to become the deadliest of all future humans. They lived in tribes led by chieftains that would obtain that right by slaying the chieftain before him in heated battles to the death. The winner would then wear his victim's hide embedded in armour to display his dominance to the community. Clothing, it seems, wasn't necessary and would only be worn in strategic places for combat and stature. It would be discovered in a final recovered video which had miraculously survived the ensuing millions of years on this dead world that the Killerfolk had never lost their fur coats through evolution. They instead would resemble human-like wolves and tigers of Earth that stood between 7 and 8 feet in height. The males would still be aggressive in society until the very end, hunting everything into submission on many worlds. The females possessed high levels of aggression as well, and would raise their children like Spartans, loving them, but at the same time not tolerating any weaknesses that could cost them their lives in a hunt. The Killerfolk were an extremely prideful race, and while they had long been a spacefaring people and had come across many other species, they had never met their equals in might, strength, and combative abilities. That was until the Gravital, themselves distant cousins of the Killerfolk, who had used quantum technology to implant their minds into machines, decided to end their existence. On that day, the Gravital entered Killerfolk space and began to block out their sun with what could only be described as a Dyson sphere, hoping to freeze their world and all others that relied on this sun dead. As it would turn out, the Killerfolk were ready for the oncoming attack. Warnings had come from the Galactic Alliance early enough that they had prepared a trap and sprung it, destroying the sphere and stopping it halfway from opening. The Killerfolk had won. They had stopped the sun sphere that others could not, and they rejoiced, mocking the fleeing Gravital as they retreated like cowards, abandoning the sphere. The final image in Nemo's records is a still from a vid capture which was taken around 48 hours before all records stopped completely. It depicts one of the last chieftains with his sleeping wife the night after the Battle of the Sun Sphere. They are celebrating the victory as they gather around fires in the dark because the sphere cannot be retracted and is already beginning to affect the planet. Too many ships were lost in this great battle, and the ships that are left are rallying over the cities for protection. Though they would be able to stop the Gravital's first attempt at Killerfolk extinction with the Sun Sphere, they would be unable to stop the second. While the Killerfolk had won this round, their defences had been so badly damaged and weakened that they would be unable to deflect a large asteroid which had been commandeered by the Gravital and directed towards the planet. This, combined with yet more Gravital warships, an enormous fleet the likes of which even the Killerfolk had never managed to amass, would mean that ultimate victory for the Killerfolk would be impossible. 2 days after this image was captured, the last Killerfolk was exterminated by the Gravital, and their world fell completely and utterly silent. A rather haunting story, wouldn't you agree? We've always known that the Killerfolk were wiped out by the Gravital, but being presented with 2 individuals who only had 48 hours to live before their species' eventual extinction really makes it hit home just how terrible an event this really was in the story. What do you guys think of the artwork? Leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to like the video, share and subscribe to the channel. This has been Beware the Q, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.